Hello and welcome to Spinster's Library. I'm Claudia and today I'm reviewing The Murder of Roger Ackroyd by Agatha Christie. Normally all my review videos are entirely spoiler free, but for this one I feel like I can't really talk about this book entirely spoiler free, so I'm going to keep it spoiler free until a certain point in the video, and then right at the end of the video I will talk about spoilers. However, don't worry, you're going to be warned well in advance, so even if you haven't read The Murder of Roger Ackroyd, you can still enjoy this video until we get to the point where I tell you to stop watching. So with this out of the way, we are going to start nice and spoiler free with a little summary of this. Now this is a Agatha Christie murder mystery, and it is the one that was recommended to me when I asked for Agatha Christie recommendations for a beginner. So this isn't the first Agatha Christie I read. I once read Murder on the Orient Express, which I didn't enjoy, and then subsequently learned that this is a much better one to start with. The story is set in a small village called King's Abbot and is told through the eyes of Dr. Shepherd, who is the first person narrator of this. He's the village GP who lives with his nosy spinster sister Caroline. Village life is described as sort of very typical, quiet, peaceful. The villagers like to gossip a lot, everyone kind of knows everyone. But the story really kicks off with the sudden death of one of the villagers, a rich lady named Mrs. Ferrars. This woman, Mrs. Ferrars, who'd been a widow, was rumoured to be engaged to another, the richest of the villagers, a man named Roger Ackroyd. So at the beginning of the story, Dr. Shepherd, the main character, gets invited to Mr. Ackroyd's house. There's a dinner party. We get to know the family, who obviously as readers of crime fiction we already know they're all going to be suspects in the upcoming murder inquiry. And then, as things tend to happen at dinner parties in these kinds of novels, someone gets murdered. Specifically, Roger Ackroyd gets murdered. And the rest of the novel we are trying to find out who did it and why. In many ways this is a very classic, a very typical murder mystery novel. It's set in this large house, and all of the people who are there at the time of the murder are suspects. And they all have something to hide. They all have alibis. Some of them might be real and some of them aren't. And we as the reader go along with the detective trying to figure out what exactly happened during that fateful night. The detective in this book is Hercule Poirot, and he gets involved in the crime in the most unsatisfying way, and that is because he happens to be the next door neighbour of the protagonist. So Dr. Shepherd's next door neighbour is literally the world famous detective Hercule Poirot. Since this is a novel that's very aware of its genre and of its tropes, I didn't mind that very ham-fisted way of involving the detective in the story. It's fine. So the narrator, Dr. Shepherd, ends up tagging along with Poirot during the investigation, and he's essentially taking the Watson role in this novel. The novel is very aware of that. It alludes in several places to Dr. Shepherd being like Dr. Watson, and even Poirot makes some references to it. He says things like that are kind of like passive-aggressively quite insulting. Things like, it's always nice to have someone of lower intelligence with me because sometimes they realise things without even realising them. So yes, the novel plays with that role of detective and his sidekick, and it does that in quite an amusing way. Once we're fully in this investigation, it checks off all the boxes. There is more red herrings than you can shake a stick at, and I'm not even sure if that metaphor works at all. But every character has something to hide, and Poirot knows that every character has something to hide. There's several scenes in which he implores the suspects to come forward, to be truthful with him, and he says that Poirot always finds out that you might hide the truth from him, but he will get to the bottom of it by the end. And of course he does. So as the reader, we are also tagging along, just like the narrator. We are getting the clues, we're trying to put them together, we're trying to figure out whose secret is something to do with the murder, and then, as always happens in these types of stories, there are many secrets that have nothing to do with the murder, or that are only tangentially related to the murder, and it's up to us to decipher these hints and to detangle the web of lies and trying to get to the truth at the bottom of it. So the book at no point becomes boring, because there really is a clue upon clue upon clue. There is one secret uncovered, and then you get a hint of another one. There are things that you just assume are one way, and then Poirot tells you otherwise. And I did okay at the guessing game. I got some of the things, and I got loads of them entirely wrong. I can tell you now that the question I didn't answer correctly is the big one, which was who committed the murder of Roger Ackroyd. I did not get that at all, but more about the specifics of that in the spoilery part later in this video. So half of the fun of the novel is the guessing game, the following along, the trying to decipher everything, you know, the interactive part of a mystery novel, the reason why we love mystery novels. But the other half of the fun is the absolute highlight that is the main character's sister, Caroline. As will surprise no one, I absolutely love a literary spinster, and Caroline is right up there. She's the creme de la creme of literary spinsters. She's such a delight. So she is an older, nosy lady whose biggest pleasure in life is to gossip, but she doesn't just like to gossip, she's also very good at it. She has this network of village ladies who all pass information to each other, and she collects this information and she passes it on as well. And she has a real sense for it. She knows stuff. She's got a very good intuition for these things. And we get confirmation of that right at the beginning when she says something about the death of Mrs. Ferrars that then turned out to be entirely correct. So we are presented with her as a gossip, but a gossip who knows her stuff. She's also just hilarious in every single scene that she's in, whether that is to do with village gossip or not. And one of my favourite parts of the book is when Poirot comes over to the neighbours, to Dr. Shepherd and his sister, for lunch or for dinner, but they've only got two, I don't know, steaks or lamb cutlets or something, because they weren't prepared to have a guest at dinner. So Caroline just pretends to be vegetarian so that Poirot can have the second cut of meat, but she does it in such a hilarious way that fools absolutely no one, but she gets really into it. I don't know, she's just the single most fun character in this entire book. She's such a delight to read about, and for me that was just as compelling a reason to read through the book as quickly as I did as the actual murder mystery was. Overall, this was a really fun read. I enjoyed both the mystery aspect of it and the story aspect. I already talked about Caroline, but there's loads of other characters that have their backstories. Agatha Christie really plays with these murder mystery character archetypes here. You've got, I mean, obviously, for example, the village doctor is such a crime mystery character, a man who goes into every home and knows a lot of private stuff about his patients. There is the creepy butler who's very unsettling in the way that he appears and behaves, and you know he's got a whole lot of secrets that he's keeping. There is the rich man and his wayward son, an interesting family dynamic there. The prim housekeeper who also has a secret, of course. So all of these characters feel quite familiar, but Christie puts enough of a spin on them to make them feel fresh and interesting rather than trite. So you have a really interesting familiarity that's kind of comforting about the book, about the characters, about the way the story progresses, but at the same time it's done by an absolute master of the craft. You can tell that Agatha Christie is so comfortable with the tropes, both story tropes and character tropes, that she just has a lot of fun with it. It's the sort of writer who knows the rules so well that she can break them and she can play with them, she can twist them in a way that makes them feel new and fresh to a reader. If you have not read this book and any of this sounds intriguing to you, if you like a good murder mystery, then I would absolutely give this one a go. It's comforting but fresh, and it has plot twists that will surprise you, that certainly surprised me. I can't talk about those twists without spoiling them. So we've gotten to the end of the spoiler-free review. Absolutely loved the book. Read it. If any of this intrigues you even slightly, it's a quick read, it's an easy read, and it's so much fun. For the love of God, if you have not read this book, do not watch beyond the spoiler warning, because you will want to read the book first. Even if you have no intention of reading the book right now and you think, it's probably fine, I'll get spoiled about this, don't. Just trust me, just read the book instead. And also, before you look in the comment section, be aware that there might be spoilers in the comments. I can't predict what people are going to write, and I expect people will want to discuss the spoilers, the twists, the resolution of this book in the comments. So if you haven't read it, probably also keep away from the comment section. Okay, what the actual... I did not see that plot twist coming. I never would have guessed that Dr. Shepard, the first person narrator, is also the killer. I have never seen that in a murder mystery. I don't know if The Murder of Roger Ackroyd is the first crime mystery novel to have that twist. It's certainly the first one that I read that had that twist. There is that point where Poirot gathers all of the suspects into his own home, and they all left. Poirot says he knows who did it and he's going to go to the police the next morning. So all of the suspects leave except for Poirot and of course Dr. Shepard, through whose eyes we've been seeing this story all along. We, the readers, are left wondering, who the hell did it? Why did he not say? Why did he not point at the person and say it was you? And then he turns to Shepard and says, but there is one person who's been there this entire time, who was there at the time of the murder, who had a motive for the murder, and has the technical knowledge to mess with that dictaphone, and who also had the opportunity to slip the dictaphone into a little black bag and take it away. The way my heart raced when I had that realization, just seconds before Poirot spells it out for the reader, that is a feeling that I don't think I'll ever feel again. Then he reveals it, and your first reaction is, oh, surely not. It can't be. We would know, surely. If the narrator was the murderer, we would know. But as we have established up to this point, Poirot is never wrong. Everything he said up to that point has proven correct. So as the reader, you trust Poirot because you know that the detective in these stories is always right and doesn't make mistakes. But you also trust the narrator because, well, his are the eyes through which we have seen the story. There is this idea of the fair mystery, right? Where the idea is that you as the reader can figure out everything, that you are presented with the exact same information as the detective. And in this case, that's clearly not the case, because the relator is so unreliable that he literally doesn't tell about the murder he committed. But I don't even care about that, because as a story, the plot twist is absolutely knockout. The way it's set up is perfect. And I don't mind that it is unfair and that I couldn't realistically have gotten that twist. I also think this gives the Murder of Roger Ackroyd a much higher reread value than a typical murder mystery, because a typical murder mystery, you read it once, you know who done it, you're like, oh damn it, I didn't get that, or you're like, yay, I got that, I suspected that person right from the start. And then that's it. It's an experience and you've had it. But with this book, because of this added layer of the incredibly unreliable narrator, you can read it with that knowledge and then pick up on those clues that I am sure Agatha Christie snuck in there really cleverly. And I was so pleased with myself for guessing some of the secrets, like the butler was obviously not the killer but had an ulterior motive for being there at that time. I guessed that the stepson, Ralph, I guessed that he had a secret relationship, though I actually thought that he had a secret relationship with the housekeeper not with the maid. That was because the housekeeper was introduced right at the beginning. The maid wasn't introduced until like halfway through the novel. So as soon as the maid made an appearance, I thought, oh yeah, actually, he probably has an affair with her rather than with the housekeeper. But either way, I was quite pleased with guessing that aspect of the story. I was convinced the secretary was the killer. Right until the very end, I thought the secretary is the killer, and everything about him confirmed it, you know. He's described as like suave and debonair. When the dictaphone came up, I also thought there was a connection there with the secretary somehow. Obviously the secretary being the person using the dictaphone. I said this was an unfair mystery and impossible to guess, but I'm sure that there are some astute readers who will have picked up on the unreliable narrator right from the beginning and will have suspected him. If you are one of those people though, please do let me know in the comments. I am not an astute reader, so I did not pick up on that, but it doesn't matter. I enjoyed the ride. There was just a single point where if I'd been a little cleverer, I probably would have noticed something was off, and that's when Dr. Shepherd gives Poirot this manuscript and he says, here, I've been writing notes about this case, I've been writing it all down. Here's this manuscript, and he says he wrote this with a view to publishing it. And I thought, well, that's a bit weird. This is the first time he's mentioned that. We haven't really seen him sit down at the end of a day and write it all down. This manuscript is sort of coming out of nowhere. And this is obviously a big clue that we can't trust anything he says, right? This is Christie telling us Dr. Shepherd is hiding some things. I did not pick up on that. I thought, well, that's a bit careless of the author to just sort of randomly bring up this manuscript that's not been mentioned before. That doesn't seem like her. That's a bit weird. And I did not pick up on that hint at all. What can I say? I'm not the sharpest. But that's fine. I didn't have to be to enjoy the Murder of Roger Ackroyd. I mean, as you can tell just from this spoilery bit, it's really hard to talk about this book without mentioning those twists. I just want to say thank you to everyone who recommended this to me. Absolutely perfect. I am definitely going to read more Agatha Christie novels. I really want to read some Miss Marple ones, because both of the ones that I have read so far have been Poirot, and in fact most of the ones that are recommended to me are Poirot novels, so I'm guessing that his books where he's the detective are better or more fun or maybe just more famous, I don't know. But if you have any Agatha Christie recommendations with Miss Marple Detective for a complete novice like myself, do drop them in the comments down below as well. Thank you for watching. Bye!